democracy, with some degree respect for human rights, etc. So it will be, I think, unfair to compare Turkish democracy with the regimes, authoritarian regimes.
Fair enough. But the idea that people are looked after, that that the money makes its way down to them, that they've got a job, that they've got economic stability.
Recently, I mean, Turkish economy has flourished significantly. Turkey got out of economic crisis fast, and also, when we look at the performance of the government, we see that the government won 2 successive elections. That tells us that the people do not have major problem with the government at the moment. And we are set for another election in June, so Turkish democracy is functioning. So the question is whether Turkish democracy can be a source of inspiration for the Middle Eastern people. There, not only the Turkish case of secularism, I think, relevant, but also the performance of the ruling party. The AK Party, with its Islamic roots, tells us that the Islamist movements are capable of transforming themselves. Once they transform themselves, embracing democracy, human rights, rule of law, market economy, then they have a better chance to reach out wider public and also build wider coalitions against authoritarian governments. So I think if Turkey is not a role model for the Arab people in the street demanding democracy, I think the ruling AK Party with its Islamic roots but pro-democracy and pro-market orientation might be an important role model. I think this is important because when we look at the transition in the Middle East, many fear, especially in the West, that transition may result in a radical Islamist regime. So the AK Party emerged there as a model of moderation, combining democracy and Islamic identity together. So AK Party, culturally conservative, but politically, economically liberal party, may have something to offer to the Middle East people.
Ihsan Dagi in Ankara talking the Turkish model of democracy with us. Thank you for your time. Now, rival military officers from North and South Korea have met for the first time since the shelling of a South Korean island back in November. These talks are aimed at easing tensions on the Korean peninsula and kickstarting the stalled North Korean nuclear negotiations. Harry Fawcett in Seoul has more.
What's in a handshake? Reading the finer points of inter-Korean diplomacy is never easy, but this meeting of colonels at the truce village of Panmunjom certainly appeared less frosty than the last one in September. All the more remarkable given what's happened in the meantime. When North Korean artillery rained down on the island of Yeonpyeong, killing 2 South Korean civilians and 2 Marines last November, there were genuine fears of escalating conflict. North Korea raised the spectre of nuclear war. The South insisted it was ready to fight. Earlier in March, a much greater loss of life on the South Korean frigate Cheonan, 46 killed in a sinking blamed by the South on a North Korean torpedo. Tuesday's talks were the result of a remarkable change in tone from Pyongyang. Since January calling for dialogue, late last month Seoul suddenly agreed, dropping its demand for an apology for the Yeonpyeong and Cheonan incidents. Seoul is demanding, though, responsible measures on the issue from the other side. Both are under pressure from their allies in Beijing and Washington to restart stalled 6-party talks on North Korea's nuclear weapons program. The fact that these talks have taken place is in itself significant, a sign of just how quickly things can change on this peninsula. But as 2 unexpected fatal incidents last year showed, they can change again for the worse just as quickly. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Tensions remain high between Thai and Cambodian troops along their disputed border. Firing stopped, but soldiers are bracing for more clashes. Fighting over the past 4 days has forced residents on both sides to evacuate that region. Japanese car manufacturer Toyota has reported a 39% drop in profits during the last quarter. Companies blaming sales slumps and a strong yen for the fall, but the world's biggest automaker has lifted its forecasted annual operating profit because of strong sales in the first 9 months outside of that quarter. Last month, Toyota did recall nearly 1.7 million vehicles worldwide over concerns about a fuel leak. India's government finally looks close to agreeing to launch a corruption investigation that could end the current parliamentary deadlock. For months, the government's opposed a probe into the award of telecoms contracts amounting to $39 billion. Cases sparked protests, and politicians feared an investigation could overshadow state election campaigns. The deadlocks also delayed the passing of the country's budget. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is back in court for the second day of an extradition hearing in the UK. He's of course wanted for questioning in Sweden over accusations of sexual assault. His defence lawyer says he could face the death penalty if sent to the United States on separate charges relating to WikiLeaks. Lawrence Lee, the latest from outside the courtroom.
The second day of this two-day extradition hearing for Julian Assange now underway. We very much expect the defence team to carry on the same day, in the same vein as day one, Monday, where they produced witnesses to try to undermine the credibility, first of all, of the prosecutor from Sweden who wants him extradited. They produced a former judge from Sweden who claimed that the Swedish prosecutor is essentially a man-hater, biased against women, who has malicious intent against Assange. They then produced a man, a blogger, an activist who claimed that at least one of the women who Assange had sex with sent out a tweet the day after this had happened saying how much fun she was having, then went out to dinner the following night with Assange, agreed to become his personal press officer, then a few days after that changed the story entirely, and then alleged rape. And so they're trying systematically to undermine the case, if you like, against him. They're obviously very concerned that if he did go to Sweden anyway, any kind of rape trial would be held in secret. They're concerned that open justice wouldn't be seen to be done. And underneath that, they're very much concerned what the American motives are, and that if he was in Sweden, it'd be far easier for the Americans to get him extradited to the United States on far more serious charges relating to WikiLeaks. I should just add one note of caution, though. It does appear that even if the extradition case actually finishes today, the likelihood is that we won't actually get an announcement, and the indications are that the judge in this case will want to go away and think about it for a few days before making his decision. But even if he does decide to extradite Assange, then Assange's people then have the right to appeal against that, and vice versa. If he doesn't agree to the extradition, then the Swedish prosecutors can appeal against that too. So by no means is this the end of the story.
Half past the hour here on Al Jazeera. These are the stories making headlines. Thousands of demonstrators continue to rally in downtown Cairo in protest against the government of Hosni Mubarak. In the last couple of hours, we've also heard from Vice President Omar Suleiman. He appeared on Egyptian television promising constitutional reforms and immunity from prosecution for demonstrators.
Today, the President signed a presidential decree for the formation of the Constitutional Committee to carry out necessary amendments to the Constitution and the parallel legislative amendments. He also instructed the Prime Minister to form the steering committee to follow up with the precise implementation of the agreements reached by the parties to the national dialogue, and a third fact-finding committee on the incidents and clashes of Wednesday last, and to refer the outcomes to the Chief Prosecutor to take necessary actions.
Still with Egypt, a Google executive has been released after being detained during the anti-government protests in Cairo. Wael Ghanim is the activist behind the Facebook page that's credited with starting the uprising. This video was uploaded to YouTube, claiming to show his capture on, January the 28th. Excuse me. The defence lawyer for former Liberian President Charles Taylor has walked out of the UN-backed Special Court for Sierra Leone in protest at the proceedings. Taylor faces 11 charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Prosecutors at The Hague say he used terror tactics to secure control of the diamond mines in Sierra Leone. He, though, denies all the charges, including ones of using child soldiers in wars which killed 250,000 people in West Africa. A Chechen separatist leader has claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing that killed 36 people at Moscow's main airport last month. In a video posted on an Islamist website, Doku Umarov described the attack as a special operation directed against Russians and their prime minister. He also said they'd launch more attacks in Russia this year in their pursuit of an independent Muslim state in the Caucasus region. And the people of southern Sudan have been celebrating after official results showed they voted overwhelmingly to break away from the north. Election officials confirmed on Monday that almost 99% of voters did back secession. Africa's newest nation will be officially confirmed in July. Right up to date with the headlines here on Al Jazeera. Inside Story is next.
It's been nearly